every once in a while, I feel like I'm not as connected to God as somebody else. Because you'll see people and they're like extremely earnest. Like, I am in love with Jesus, they'll say. And they like, the people on TV, they're weeping, they're flying, they're floating themselves around. I don't know, they seem to be a lot more involved with this relationship that I feel like I've got a good handle on. But I'm not much of a weeper. Like, I don't cry very often. And so...
Except for when your Hugh Grant picture gets battery acid on it.
No!
That's all I know.
But like, so I guess every once in a while, it makes me feel a bit self-conscious, and I think like, am I not as close to God as these people are? Look how they feel, look how they're acting.
Because you're not as emotionally engaged.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
You're not.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
next-
you're failing.
No.
You're pretty much a loser.
Well, I guess my question was, and the only reason this came up is because I happened to been reading in 1 John, and I found something that I thought, hey, now I can get on board with this because this sounds like something I can be up to. So this is in 1 John chapter 5, verse 3, and it says, "This is love for God, to obey His commandments." And I thought, well, I'm trying really hard to obey His commandments, and if that's love to God, I'm loving God. And then I thought, maybe there's a catch to this. Like, is there a catch to it where, like, yeah, you have to do the commandments, but then you also have to weep about it, to cry for Jesus? Like, I don't know, Dan. Is there more, or I mean, is me following God, acknowledging who He is, what He's done, the Son that He sent for me, and obeying those commandments because I believe who He is? Is that appropriate, showing love for God?
You know, it's in the Old Testament, it's in the New Testament. Jesus talks about what's the greatest commandment: to love you, the Lord your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And you look at that, and that involves emotion, but it also involves intellect. You know, your heart, your soul, your mind. It's just your whole being. I think what we tend to do as people is we relate to God in the same way we relate to other people.
Right.
So you know, you're kind of an analytical guy, and you know, so you probably don't weep a whole lot. You know, I've known people who you just look at them and you think, really? You know, honestly? I mean, you're like, you just came in and like some song started and you're weepy and you're like, you know. And I'm the same way. I'm like, you know, it'd be one thing if I didn't know what you're doing on the side, you know, because I'm going, not to be judgmental, but I'm like, okay, dude, you're not even like really living the life. So are you weeping because you know you're not living the life, or why are you weeping? And then you talk to me, oh, I just love God so much, you know, and God's so awesome, and like, well, yeah, He is, but then you got to have that 1 John in balance. You know, you can throw out all the emotion you want; it's really meaningless if it's not put in, you know, backed up with action.
Right, it's a show.
Exactly.
I tell you what, and that's what, like, you know, the qualms most people have with like televangelists, you know, is they'll point to them and they'll, you know, they'll do the whole hypocrite thing, you know, which we've talked about before. It's like, you can't be a Christ follower and not be a hypocrite. That's not the deal. Like, the problem I generally have with them is I don't think they're being earnest, and I think it's a show. Like you're trying to phony God's appearance for what? God could stand on His own 2 feet. He doesn't need your show. You know what I'm saying? I mean, His grace and His love is more than sufficient, more than obvious enough without you, you know, dropping to your knees and bawling. You know, like the Lord is such either an overwhelming joy, which I suppose, or a huge burden to you. Either one, you know. I don't know. I mean, there's a good portion of the population that weep, but not like that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, something really has to happen for me to drop to my knees and weep openly.
Really, yeah. I mean, I have known some people who are, you know, pretty rough guys, but when it really hits them, the depth of God's love for us and His grace, you know, I've seen them get, you know, not necessarily weepy, but, you know, like emotional. They'll quiver, their voice will kind of like, you know, and I kind of respect that because, you know, because I know they're also living it too. I mean, not perfectly everything, but I mean, you know what I'm saying. It's the real deal to them. And so it is kind of annoying, though, when people are flailing around, and to me, it's annoying to you know, it's like any relationship you have. If you're married and you are emotionally pouring out to your wife, you know, and you have this great evening, you bring flowers and you get her a nice card with all this wonderful flowery language, and you bring her some chocolates, and you know, you're having a romantic candlelight dinner, and there's just tears in your eyes saying, "I just love you so much. You just mean so much to me. You're the greatest person ever." And they're feeling really good about it because they don't know what's really going on in the background. And then the next day at work, you know, you bring a prostitute in because you're like, "Well, that was last night. You know, I really do love my wife, but man, I really want this
like
too."
the guy that brings the prostitute to work.
Well, you know, you got to be wherever, however this works. I've never done the prostitute thing,
Hey,
so
fair.
I don't really know how it works.
Hey, Jim. Hey, Bill. Yeah, this is Sarah.
She'll just be here for about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But you know,
I hope it's no longer than that. Used to be expensive.
that's right. I'm on the clock. But you know, how does your wife feel when you bring the photos home? Oh, I met Sally over lunch. You know,
Boy, you're a real piece of work.
I'm
This
just saying.
Jim is like a grade A jerk, man. I love you so much. I'm gonna get a prostitute. I'm gonna take some pictures. I'll show them to you.
Yeah, that'd be really good. Well, that's what God says that we are when we can pour out all these emotions all we want, but if we're not obeying Him, and which is what the First John text is saying, that to this is love for God, to obey His
You know,
commandments.
I think maybe that might be the single biggest propagator of false following is misunderstanding what it is to show love for God. Because people want to embrace the relational, the God that loves us and supports us, which He does.
Mm-hmm.
But the love they show back is just appreciation for Him loving us.
Yeah,
Right? It
yeah.
doesn't tend to be like God says, "You show me love by obeying my commandments." And you know, and we can turn it on for church on Sunday, and then we can walk out the door and be the jerks that we started with.
Yeah.
And we think, well, that's okay. God loves me and He'll forgive me. And to realize that we're not showing love for God at all because we're not acting that way. And, you know, previously, actually, First John, I was looking for things to kind of make sure I wasn't misreading this, and First John is just full of them. Even back a chapter in chapter 3, it says, "Dear children, let us not love with words or tongue, but with actions and in truth." Which very much insinuates that if I could care less what it is that you're saying. And when in Matthew where it says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and your soul and your strength," I mean, He's identifying all the ways of which you are to be obeying Him.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Obey with your heart. Obey with your mind. Use your strength to follow my commandments. And it's not as simple as, "Oh, I just need to love God stronger."
Exactly. In a Russian accent. If I could have a little gypsy blood in me. But that goes back to every decision, every choice you make as a believer. I mean, because we're imperfect, we will at times fail and we'll fall to temptation. But when you have that issue in your life that you keep going back to and you allow yourself to, it's a love issue. Because you're choosing between, do I love God more, do I love me more? Well, I really like, whatever this thing is that I'm doing. And that's why John's saying, hey, really, if you want to show your love for God, just obey Him. Just do what He says.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't think of it in that term.
No,
those terms.
And I think again to a certain extent, sometimes to the detriment of it. If we don't, if we look at loving God as something that we have to. I think sometimes we try to get there by, if I just prayed more, if I talked slower, if I thought differently, if I listened to passionate music. Like, I mean, don't get me
I
wrong.
put longer pauses in my prayer.
Yeah, if
Yes.
I could just be a little bit more heavy for Jesus, that would do it.